leads to confusion as to what precisely qualifies a member to be referred to as a cadre. And because we use the words interchangeably, and it's not only us as the ANC, I've discovered that we do the same in our official documents in the country. You read the Constitution of the Republic, it refers to the President as head of state and as the executive. So when we refer to, and the documentation, official documentation also speaks of the fifth administration, meaning the totality of government. And then it says the fifth government or fifth parliament. And interchangeably, we also refer to that as the state. So it's administration, it's government, it's the state, and they mean the same thing, and they mean different things, depending on context. So I'm just pointing out that part of the importance of political education is actually to be precise in language, so that we mean what we say, and we don't create occasion where we say, no, we've been misunderstood, misinterpreted, or misquoted. So language is important from that perspective, comrades. So my remarks, comrades, I thought I would base them on three sources. And my sources, not in any particular order, are Moses Kwatani, Gavin Mbeki, and Agostino Neto. I chose to base my remarks on these three sources for the simple reason that all three of them address the reason for existence of organization. Why does an organization exist? So, Moses Kotani says human beings form organizations for a purpose. They form an organization for a purpose. And so, if you belong to any organization that is being formed for any purpose, you must be loyal to that organization. Which may mean that you do not, because you are from the ANC, now you are in a community organization or residence organization and so on, you don't take over leadership of that organization. You become loyal to it and accept to be led by whoever is there. Because leadership can be provided from behind as well. Madiba always emphasized how Walter Sisulu led them from behind in the Youth League of the 40s. He says Walter led us, was never a threat to nobody, but knew precisely which one among us must be tasked to lead at a certain point or certain context. So it is not absolutely necessary for you as a member of the ANC who also belong to other organizations. You may be a worker, you belong to a trade union, you may be in the civic, you may be in a sporting association, you may be in an adult choir. All of these are organizations formed for a purpose. And your role in them is to be loyal to them and not to take over the leadership. Because if you take over the leadership, at the end, you're going to find that the various organizations, the full gamut of them, is meeting. And all of you are members of the ANC. So you speak to yourselves under different guises. It happens also at the level of the alliance, where you find that the same people are leaders and therefore take decisions. I remember a case in point where the president of COSATU faced disciplinary hearing. First in the SACP, and then as he appeared, his deputy in the teachers' union was presiding in that hearing. And then, of course, he was found guilty. And the second instance where he appeared before the disciplinary committee was in COSATU. And once again, he finds that his deputy in his union is presiding over that disciplinary hearing. And of course, he was found guilty. And the third time was when now his union instituted disciplinary proceedings against him. And his deputy was presiding in that. So you have the same, and that's not how it's supposed to be. Because if you form a united front, it must be a united front of different organizations. But if you take over leadership, then it's the same organization. Because it's the same personalities. This, what I'm sharing with you, is what Moses Kotane said to members of the Communist Party in the 1950s. That members of the Communist Party must never take over leadership of other organizations. And he explains, he says, because people form organization for a purpose. They don't just form them. So I thought Moses Kotane is my source in so far as he deals with why people form organizations. The second source, as I said, is Gavin Mbeki. So on Gov, around 1982, when the first of the 1976 activists who were sentenced to prison, most of them, the mandatory sentence was 5 years. So they got into prison in end of 1976, beginning of 1977, thereabouts. And so in 5 years' time, around 1982, 81, they would all be released. So Gov prepared documents which dealt with different topics. But the important one that I thought I should share with you, he entitled it, Good Organization, the Key to Success. And this was supposed to be part course, for those who were being released going out of prison into a bigger prison, and how to organize. And so he says, he quotes, from, he paraphrases, basically, a message from the Bible, attributed to Jesus, Jesus was, reported to have said the following before he ascended to heaven after resurrection. So he says, "Go ye into the wilderness and make the way of the Lord straight." Amen. Yeah. Yes. But Comrade Davin Beggy says, no, we are dealing with human beings. We are dealing with society, with more complex conditions. Therefore, he says, we paraphrase this, and he says, "Go to the masses of the oppressed and exploited peoples of our land. Work among them, work with them to prepare the way for a takeover of power. Go organize." That's the message. Now, the question that, and he says, there's no room for, haphazard and half-hearted measures in organizing. There's no room for that. You've got to plan, you've got to set targets, and you've got to work towards the achievement of those targets. So, to tackle those tasks, you've got to be meticulous, you've got to be methodical, you've got to be systematic, and do the work in a disciplined fashion. I did say that, we speak in our vocabulary of these words interchangeably. So, discipline, for instance, many of us understand discipline to mean that you don't do wrong. That's the meaning of being disciplined. And then we enforce discipline. But there's discipline of work. What is your attitude towards the work flowing out of the task given to you? If you are given a task and you don't perform it, and when you are asked to report, you say, comrades, now you see last night there was load shedding, and so I couldn't prepare the report. That's fine, first time. Next time you say, no, now my computer bombed, and the work that I've done, the report I prepared was eaten up by gremlins. And then the next time you give another reason as to why you did not perform. Now, once that happens, comrades like Comrade Harry Boala would say, this is a wind bag. It's a bag full of wind. And they chuck you out. Yeah, they chuck you out because otherwise you are a bag of wind that is going to burden them going forward. But nothing will get done. So the discipline of work means that there is no excuse for it. The work, the task that is given to you must be performed. Failure to do so must have consequences. Now, I'm saying this because, you see, earlier on, I don't know whether the youth leaguers are now present. Okay. Welcome. We discussed you in your absence, and we want to apologize for having done so, because we shouldn't discuss you in your absence. And we also want to apologize that we started this workshop before you arrived. We assure you that it will not happen again. So one of the key questions, comrades, that we have to answer is, what is the purpose of an organization? The cause justifying its existence. Why does it exist? That's one of the key questions that we must answer. Because political education can't be focused only on structures of elected leadership. Political education must start with how we recruit members. Therefore, we must have, Comrade David, we must have guidelines of how to recruit, because that's the first step in political education. Because if we don't recruit that way, and we don't put the requisite importance to the task of recruiting members, we will, of course, be an organization that has large numbers on the eve of a conference, and then those numbers disappear rapidly thereafter. And so we have no organization. Now, Comrade Gavin Beki explains the distinction between an organization and a movement. Once again, this is why it's important for us to use these words properly so that we mean what we say. Now, we use them interchangeably. Sometimes we refer to the ANC as a movement, and sometimes as an organization. So, Comrade Gavin draws a distinction between an organization and a movement. He says in a movement, members of a movement have rights, but they have no duties and responsibilities. But in an organization, members have rights and tasks. If you're a member of an organization and the organization gives you no tasks, you must know one day they will refer to you as a fellow traveler. Because in an organization, each and every member must have a task. Otherwise, the leadership will say, next week, Wednesday, this and that is going to happen, and nothing will happen. Because the leadership is guessing. In an organization, members have tasks and they perform those tasks. In a movement, you can fill up F&B stadium. But if you watch very carefully what happens, you will see people moving from one side of the stadium to the other, and so on, onto the pitch, and so on. They are moving because it's a movement. They don't know why they are there. They don't know why they are there. In an organization, those who are there know that they represent those who are not there. And they will listen attentively to the messages because they have a duty and responsibility to report back when they go back to the rest of the members. But in a movement, whether the national anthem is being sung or the president is delivering the message, you will see movement, people going this way and that way, this way and that way, throughout, because they don't know why they are there. They were probably brought in on false pretexts. But an organization each one knows why they are there. And this explains why, when you see, if you have a national elective conference, the ANC constitution defines a national elective conference as a structure. It's a structure, no different from the National Executive Committee, but a higher structure. But people think it's the same thing as attending a Soweto derby or a Durban derby or a Tshwane derby in football. It's not the same thing, it's a structure. And so each delegate, the word delegate means that members who can attend delegate their right of participation to you. That's what it means. So you represent those who are not there, who cannot attend. That's why you are called delegate. And those who send you to be their delegate, do so with the full understanding that you are going to be part of a national structure that's going to discuss national issues, that's going to elect national leadership. They do so on those bases. But you see, because we, as Ongov, wants that there must be no room for haphazard and half-hearted measures. So we convene one meeting, one coordinating meeting of a branch, and we elect delegates. On what basis? On what basis? What are they going to do when they form this structure called National Conference? On what basis? So you need a series of meetings. It doesn't matter whether they correct or they don't correct, to discuss and debate all issues that are going to be debated at conference. And only once you've exhausted that process, you then convene the last meeting, which must correct, because the Constitution says it must correct. And there you elect from among yourselves those that you believe are better placed to represent your views. So when they get into this national structure, they are there to influence and be influenced. So, as a leadership, you cannot afford to preside over a conference made up of delegates unknown to you. That's a risk you can never take, because you will never be able to have a productive, disciplined conference, because you don't know these people. You don't know whether they know why they are there. The Communist Party of China, with 97 million members, its national conference is attended by 2,000 delegates. And they are elected and known by all members, because it's a national structure. So you can't get to a national elective conference and you regard yourself as a province, you regard yourself as a branch, because you are part of a national structure. You must think as members of a national structure. But the point I'm trying to emphasize, comrades, is that political education must answer this question of how to ensure that each and every member of the ANC understands why the ANC exists, understands the purpose for its existence. So Ongov says an organization arises where there is an urge to solve a problem. An urge, a burning desire to solve a problem boils down to the desire to achieve something. So as a member, it doesn't matter. The other day, comrades told me that the comrades in the Northern Cape up front tell you that they will never have a branch in Orania, a place called Orania there in the Northern Cape. Now that's not how you approach organization, because there are problems in Orania. And as an organizer, as a member, you must be able to get somebody in Orania to identify their problem and its causes. That's the basis of organizing. And that can happen anywhere across the length and breadth of the country. I said my other source is Agostinho Neto, and I'm going to share with you. Dr. Agostinho Neto was the first president of the MPLA and the first president of Angola. And his attitude was that the MPLA exists simply to solve the problems of the people. Same, you see, you find the same understanding of organization. He says that's what the MPLA exists for. And much later, after the MPLA had won its independence, in and around 1992, Paulo Jorge, who was once governor of the province of Benguela, as well as Minister of International Relations, and famously, Paulo Jorge, again, language and vocabulary. Paulo Jorge always emphasized that political parties and countries cannot have affairs. He says, affairs don't last, it's relations that last. You build relations, not affairs. So once again, we use affairs and relations interchangeably. But Paulo Jorge always drew the distinction. He says, affairs don't last, it's relations that last. You must establish relations, don't get involved in affairs. Yeah. Of course, he was saying it tongue-in-cheek, comrades. So Paulo Jorge, following a government decree in 1992, the government of the MPLA in Angola decreed that to allow ministers to become businessmen. Yeah. So he says that brought a change in mentality. Moral values disappeared, replaced by material values. Just that decision. And another MPLA leader, Lucio Lara, says much later, when the effects of this decree of allowing ministers to become businessmen, which Paulo Jorge says it brought a change in mentality, moral values disappeared, replaced by material values. When that happened, much later, Lucio Lara, who was also basically one of the Central Committee members, of the MPLA says the following: when now the effects of this decision become obvious to everyone, he says, "I do not have illusions about many things anymore. In the Angolan struggle, perhaps we did not have philosophers or sociologists, but we had those words of Neto's." And he quotes Neto saying, "The most important thing is to solve the people's problems." He says that's what they had. And he says, one day in the Council of Ministers meeting, I heard someone say that we should stop using this phrase that the MPLA exists to solve the problems of the people. And he says, I thought then maybe he was right, because no one spoke out against it. In my opinion, this was when the MPLA began to collapse, because the leaders felt they all had the right to be rich. That was the beginning of the destruction of our life. And he says that was the death of dignity. And one writer, Victoria Britton, wrote a book on Angola entitled Death of Dignity. So what this illustrates, comrades, and I thought it is important to share this with you, is that political systems can achieve its goals if you have the correct leaders. And those achievements can be reversed, as Lucio Rara attests, if you have wrong leaders. So in Angola, they end up, Agostino Neto passed on, they end up with President dos Santos, Eduardo dos Santos. And President Eduardo dos Santos gives everything to his children. His daughter was, Isabel, was known to be the richest woman in all the continent of Africa and beyond. Because, you know, just to give you a sense of it, revenue accruing from the sale of oil, 40% of that revenue went to Isabel. All licenses, telephony licenses, Isabel. And before he died, President dos Santos established the Sovereign Wealth Fund and appointed his son, the brother to Isabel, as the chair of that fund. And the first decision the son made was to transfer $5 billion into his own account. So now President dos Santos is no more. He was replaced by President João Lourenço. And President João Lourenço turned things around. He went after all these public resources to get them back into the public kitty. The chair of the Sovereign Fund, as I speak, was arrested, tried, convicted, is in prison, and the $5 billion was recovered. So this illustrates how leadership is important. Leadership with integrity and honesty is important, because you can experience reversals And you can also experience corrections of those reversals, depending on how and what caliber of leaders you elect. And that's why it is important to understand national conference as a structure, so that you don't get to a national conference with people who think they are in a university grade hall. Because in a university grade hall, you know, 5 students, 2 in the front, 1 in the middle, 2 at the back, can sway the decision of the students. But a national elective conference of a serious organization as a structure cannot be conducted the same way as you conduct student mass meetings in a great hall. So these are the 3 sources, comrades. I want to leave you ultimately with what Moses Kotane says about education, the importance of education. And this is from a document that you will find in the South African Communist Speak. It's document number 74. In part, I don't have to quote the entirety of the document, but he wrote this piece on the importance of education. And he says the following: proper education is a mirror in which man sees the world around him and learns to understand it. The right education enables man to see what the world has been, what it is, and how it can be changed to suit him or his way of living. Education can be and has been used to befuddle the minds of common people. But education can also be used as an important instrument in the struggle for freedom and human progress. It is this kind of education which we need. So you have today, comrades, many young intellectuals who preface their remarks and views with a disclaimer that they are not politicians. They say, I'm not a politician. And then they say their piece. And you can see when they do so with confidence that their views are therefore authentic, without realizing that that very statement, the disclaimer, is itself a political statement to start with. So part of our responsibility, part of the responsibility of an ANC member is to engage with whoever is next to you. In the olden days of struggle against apartheid, Radio Freedom used to open by saying, sons and daughters of the motherland, wherever you are, organize those around you. Wherever you are. That's what we should be saying today for each and every member of the ANC. Because if you are approached precisely because you are known to be a member of the ANC, and so your neighbor or somebody in the neighborhood approaches you with a question, asks you a question, and you don't appreciate that this is an opportunity, it's a privilege for you to explain. And if you don't know, you simply say, I have no answer, but I will come back to you tomorrow or by end of the week. And you go away and you find the facts. And you come back, you take the trouble to come back to explain. Because that's how the prestige of the ANC and standing in the community will rise. But if they know this is a member of the ANC, and each time they come to you, you don't know. They will try again and you don't know. They try the third time, you don't know. They write you off. And they write the ANC off. They say, no, those ones, I mean, they don't know. You see? So it's very important, because you see, political education, you don't need organized class. If you have an organized class, group of people, well, all the better. But actually, political education is conducted when you explain something in a way which solves a problem of an ordinary person. One person. If you do that, that's more than enough. Rather than if you are irritated by people who ask questions to you. And you deal with them flippantly, you deal with them arrogantly, and you dismiss them. That's the worst thing, because that is actually working against the interests of the organization. So, Bertolt Brecht explains that the West illiterate is the political illiterate. He says a political illiterate hears nothing, sees nothing, takes no part in political life. He doesn't seem to know that the cost of living, the price of beans, of flour, of rent, of medicines, depend on political decisions. He even prides himself on his political ignorance, sticks out his chest and says he hates politics. He doesn't know that from his political non-participation comes the prostitute, the abandoned child, the robber, and worst of all, corrupt officials, the lackeys of exploitative multinational corporations. So that is what Bertolt Brecht says is the West illiterate, the political illiterate. So, comrades, lastly, I thought I should end by indicating that, and of course Comrade David has alluded to that giving voice to our youth is important. It's a very important action. But more important is taking time to mentor, to listen, and to take heed of what those voices are articulating. And therefore, as leaders, that's what you must take to heart. Know that you must have the patience to listen to young people, understand their vocabulary. I interact with a young chap from Soweto from time to time, and because I don't understand his vocabulary, I can see that it's going to take a while for me to have a proper engagement with you. Because when there's a problem and I suggest how the problem should be solved, when it is done, he doesn't want to waste time. He just says, "Fruitman, gimnandi manje, gimnandi." And it ends there. So I realized that it is also important to understand the vocabulary of these young people. Because we tend to be long-winded, in our explanations. And the chap just says, "Imnandi manje," and full stop. It's all done. So comrades, political education, as I said, starts with recruitment. How we recruit members into the organization. Because you could use publications. You see, when we publicize or publish, in fact, we just distribute it, give it to those who are close, and leave it at that. That can be a recruiting tool, because when you give that to somebody, obviously someone you are unfamiliar with, you don't know, you must be able to say, here is this publication, read it, I will come back after 2 weeks to discuss this article in it. And after 2 weeks you go and discuss that article. That way, even our publications can be part of the arsenal that we use for recruiting. Rather than just, handing out, even a t-shirt. I mean, t-shirt has a meaning. You don't just give it away. But of course, it takes time. You must be committed and determined to follow up all the time. Follow up. That way we can, I think, build the organization into a formidable force which engages with communities to solve their problems. That is the purpose of the existence of the organization. So, Comrade David, those are my remarks.
Thank you, Mkulwa. They have become an address.